Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final installment of our final evening of our Healing with Pride Instagram Live series. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Reim, Ifrach, who is on our board of directors, and we're going to be talking about managing transition during recovery. So, I'm super excited about this conversation. We've been looking forward to this since we started planning it. And as we're waiting for M to get ready to join us, I will do a little introduction and read their bio. So M is the co-owner of Rainbow Recovery, which is a queer-owned and operated therapeutic co-op where they support people through recovery from eating disorders, body image issues, substance use, complex trauma, and walk the journey of gender-affirming care and queer issues, which I love. M is also an adjunct art therapy professor at Albertus Magnus College, where they teach multicultural and diversity practices. And when M isn't working, they enjoy raising all the animals, making art, getting their nails done, and watching as many horror movies as humanly possible. So I'm very excited to welcome M. I also realized that I have introduced myself, which I will do right now. And here is M. M's going to join me for my introduction. My name is Joey Lubelfeld, and I am the Development and Marketing Manager for Project Teal. My pronouns are they, them. And here is M. Welcome. I'm so excited to see you.
Hi, I'm so excited to see you. Your shirt is fabulous.
Told you. Thank you. And I'm also wearing this lovely, lovely they, them that M got for me, and we're just a little twinning tonight. So
Oh, love it.
we planned for this. I'm so excited. This is such a to me that we get to face together and have this conversation. So I am so grateful for the opportunity, and I can't wait to dive in. You're looking wonderful this evening.
Thank you.
I have to say that I'm loving the eyes. So
Thanks.
where I want to talk about managing eating disorder recovery through the process of transitioning. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is this question of what does it mean to transition to you?
Oh, so right, it's different for each of us. I think as someone who identifies as non-binary and also trans, for me, it was really about creating a body that matched my gender and the way like I authentically feel in the world in like those euphoric moments or those moments where I feel like most myself. And it's complicated, right? When you have an eating disorder because you spent so long trying to manipulate your body to present a certain way anyway. And so for me, there was like a lot of therapy around, what purpose does transitioning serve for me? And ultimately, it came down to wanting to kind of live the life that I had always tried to attain and couldn't in a cis body presenting as cis when I was a non-binary person.
I love that. And I relate to so much of that. I think the intersection between transness and non-binariness and eating disorders is really unique and interesting to me because it all deals with the body and transforming and changing the body. One in this really maladaptive way, the eating disorder, and then one in this really beautiful, positive, affirming way, this gender transition. So I've always noticed these like opposing forces in my life as I'm trying to just figure out how to
Yes.
exist the body that I'm in.
I agree. It becomes so complicated, right? Like, I'm also like a fat person in a big body. And so it's like, did I want to lose weight because the world told me that fat was bad? Because family members growing up had mean things to say when I eat? Is it because when I figured out my gender, my body wasn't congruent? Is it all of it? Does the reasoning even really matter once you have an eating disorder, right? And I don't know about you, but it's almost like you spend a little bit of time in treatment being tortured to figure out a truth that you're probably never going to get to because it's all of those things.
Oh, right. It's always this question of like, where did this come from? When did it start? And
Yep.
how you move past it, or talking about who you were before you had the eating disorder, or trying to figure out this question of identity. And I struggle with identity still, and I struggled with it a lot during treatment, especially because I started to come into my own non-binariness and my own transness was like so many other LGBTQ folks was during treatment. I also
Yep.
want to I did forget to mention something else tonight that's really important to me. Tonight's Instagram Live is a fundraiser for Project Teal's LGBTQ plus treatment equity project. And it's a project that's really near and dear to our hearts since about 38% of our applicants are in the LGBTQ plus community. And this fund goes directly to supporting those who are suffering from an eating disorder in that community without access to care. So if you can find it in your hearts to give a little bit tonight, we'd really appreciate it. Any amount truly goes a really long way to if you do donate, it will take you quite quickly away from the page. If it's not loading, feel free to refresh it, and then you can come right on back. If tonight is not an option for donating, the links are available on our website. So I just wanted to share that, and we can get back to our conversation. Yay! Um, when did you start your transition?
Oh, that's complicated. So, I mean, I've been in therapy for a really long time, since I was kind of a kid, like the beginning of middle school. And I had a horrible therapist who is not practicing anymore. That's how traumatized I am. I needed to make sure that she wasn't practicing, who, when I started to want to explore this, was told from a very colonizing, puritanical, cis white viewpoint that like that notion wouldn't serve me. And so I locked it away. And I buried my trauma and my suicidal ideation and my self-harm and all of those things on top and on top and on top. And so it wasn't until being an adult and being in grad school and studying art therapy where, you know, the beauty and torture of being an art therapist is like the art can't lie the way that words can. And so as you start to peel back those layers, right, of all of those things, and you strip yourself away of all of those things, there's that thought at the bottom. And so I would say, you know, turning 30 and that thought is at the bottom, and realizing I had spent the first 30 years of my life not as myself, not living fully out and proud the way that I had helped so many other people do, not living fully recovered the way I've helped so many people do. And it really took that realization and someone really close to me dying by suicide to realize that like life is too short to pretend I'm not me, because someone might not like it, because someone might leave, because I might be too much or not enough, when the reality is I am just what I need to be right now as M, in this body, in this moment. And anyone who has anything different to say is probably not someone I want to be around.
I love that so much. That is such an amazingly wonderful space to be in. So I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I know for myself, there was always this overlap between the eating disorder and this idea of my self-identity, of my queerness, of my sexuality, and my transness. So I'm wondering for you, how did those two intersect? And did one sort of, kind of pun intended, feed the other?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I came out in high school as bisexual, and that was pretty easy just because my parents sent me to the best weird Quaker art school where they knew like I would be safe and I would be affirmed in some way. And so I got to have a really privileged and unique experience that most teenagers didn't get to have. But it didn't protect me, because nothing can really protect us, right, from fat phobia and our culture and the way bodies are talked about. And so we're talking, you know, I was in high school in like 2000, so 21 years ago, which cool. And I think back to like the music videos, because that was when MTV only played music videos. There was a time, y'all, and reality TV wasn't as popular as it is now. The Real Housewives did not exist. And I look at those messages and I realize that there were no major queer people that I had to look up to. Like, I know we joke at Project Heal because I love Elton John so much. I know you're not watching, but I wish you were. But like really, like that was one of the few people I had to look up to. I had Elton John. I had David Bowie. I had these kind of musicians that started their careers before I was born, but there was no one my age. There was no one in my age bracket in their 20s that looked like me or sounded like me or identified the way I knew inside. And so to me, that was a message that I didn't fit in and I had to change. And it became really, really easy. Like when you're in a bigger body, having anorexia is super easy because people reward you. Like I can remember teachers, doctors, friends, my entire family just being so thrilled for me every time I lost weight without really ever wondering whether or not it was happening in a healthy way. And I think often when it wasn't happening in a healthy way, it still looked exciting because I had and still have these orthorexic tendencies that our culture really likes, right? Like if I'm eating a ton of broccoli for dinner, magically we're all proud, but no one's upset that I'm eating a ton of broccoli only for dinner.
That keyword is the only, isn't it?
Yeah,
Well, we do have, I mean, we live in, I honestly, and this might be a very bold statement to make, I am
please.
going to say that we live in an eating disorder society.
Yes.
And I have thought this for a while between diet culture and it's related to white supremacy and colonialization. And it's all these big, big things that are trickling down into every single person. And I had a really similar experience where as I started to change my body, I received these positive messages.
Yep.
Because I was a high weight kid. So as soon as I started to lose weight, which was this thing that people wanted me to do for so long, I just kept internalizing this message that the only way to be accepted was to alter my body and to be thinner. And then you
Yep.
drag in the images that we have in the media about what it means to be femme and to be a woman in this society. And the smaller I made my body, the more effeminate that I felt. And that
Yep.
felt really euphoric in this way that wasn't serving me.
Yep.
Because I maybe felt euphoric gender wise for a few moments, but in every other moment I was suffering.
Oh, absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you get the inch, but everyone takes the mile, right? As the saying goes. Like,
Yeah.
cool, I got that validation that one time, that one, big family get together was finally safe, but it didn't make up for the 364 other days that I was hungry and tired and still denying my authentic self so deeply and firmly as a way to stay safe, to stay sane, to be seen and unseen at the same time, which is kind of like I tell everyone, I feel like being non-binary is you live in the both and you live in the gray space, you're seen and unseen, and people choose for us when we get to have our pronouns or when our gender is valid. And I've watched it with my clients, I've watched it with my friends, I've definitely experienced it myself. And then it's kind of like, of course I had an eating disorder. I needed something to be my friend. I needed something to rescue me. I needed something to affirm me. And my eating disorder did that when no one else would.
Yeah, I think the eating disorder for me did all of those things and it parented me in a way.
Yep.
Because you were talking about how you didn't have any queer icons to look up to. And I super relate to that. I also found David Bowie at a moment in my life where I really needed David Bowie. Um, just to throw that out. Um, love me some David Bowie. I didn't really get taught how to manage my emotions and how to self-regulate and self-soothe. And so then the eating disorder
Yes.
comes into play. And it's this lack of feeling guided that I
Mm-hmm.
think kept me going on this path because I was finally like gaining approval from this thing that was like this worm in my brain was telling me that I was doing so well when
Yes.
that's not the case. But the worm wants what the worm wants and it's going to keep poking and poking and poking until it's just like in your soul. And
Yes.
you know, feedback from it. And then you throw in this concept of gender and identity and expression, and you add other layers of body expression and visibility that make such a perfect storm, I think. Like exactly as you said, it only is natural that I had an eating disorder. All of the pieces converged. And I don't know, I'm curious to know for yourself. For me, I found that part of my recovery has been honoring my transness and being able to say this is who I am and move into a space of authenticity. And that space has not cured me. That was not a cure because I don't
No.
really is like a cure all for anything necessarily, but it did help me. And so I'm curious as to how you coming out and your transition helped you.
Um, I mean, not to, have a pun, but like a literal weight was lifted for me. Um, I didn't realize that I had been holding my breath for over 30 years. And it was like I could finally breathe. And when I could breathe, I could also do things like buy the foods that I would say we couldn't have in our home because what if I ate too much? or to not feel guilty when I order a pizza because I'm a therapist and I work long hours and I love everybody in my life, but I don't want to cook at 9 o'clock at night. But my eating disorder told me that I was failing if I didn't. And so, it created these emotional barriers around me, around people. It made me grumpy and just like not a pleasant person. And so when I came out, my eating disorder got so much smaller. It was almost like my eating disorder and inner child became this one little thing. And like little M could finally heal because big M finally showed up to parent her. And I always talk about really like little Emily because that's who I was. And I know not every trans person likes to talk about themselves that way. I do, because Emily was a big part of me, and she was a little girl that didn't deserve to be spoken to that way or experience those things. And she needed me to grow up and be M, they, them. She needed to see that it would be okay. And now it's okay. And so as I move through this medical transition, right, she's kind of like throwing tantrums in there, which definitely throws a monkey wrench in some of this. But it's really beautiful to know that like this is possible.
It is possible. And that's what I think is really important to throw out there, because I never thought it was possible for myself. And I'm starting to see more and more the possibilities of it.
Yay. Oh, that makes my heart so happy.
Moving through, because there was a lot of hopelessness for me for a really long time. I still do a lot of comparing myself to everybody else. And everyone else is more trans or more non-binary or more queer or better than I am, in the same way that everybody was better at the eating disorder than I was. But that's the nature of it, is this idea of comparison. And I think a lot of it comes from also not having anybody to look up to, that we're trying to find these things to look up to, these things to connect to, because we lacked that growing up. So I love what you're talking about that inner child work that you did. Like, that sounds really powerful. You also mentioned your medical transition. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that has been like.
Oh, sure. That's why we're here. It's been, for lack of better words, it's been fucking wild in like the best way. So we started out at the end of May, beginning of June, with me having a hysterectomy. And, my story behind that is actually really complicated. One, having a period, having a uterus, having all this pressure to be pregnant and have children when my partner and I, that's not something that we wanted, weighed really heavily on me all the time, especially as friends were getting married and having children. And there was that little bit of like societal pressure of like, ooh, is it going to be your turn next? But I experienced sexual abuse growing up and had really bad reproductive health issues from my first period. So my period is twofold for me. It was physically painful and reminded me of so much trauma that part of my body went through. And then it caused dysphoria. And so often there were these weeks of my life every month where I would just be a fucking mess, because either my trauma brain is activated or my dysphoria is activated. My eating disorder loves when my brain is in that space because I forget to eat. So then I lose weight. So then we feel successful, even though we're really like a hot mess. And the reproductive specialist I have been working with for years is also the surgeon that does these surgeries, and basically said, if you want it, you can have it. We do not need loopholes, which I am saying now on this call is the biggest privilege anyone has ever given me. And I know so many people that want this surgery and don't get to have it. And I can't imagine hearing no again. Like, I needed it therapeutically. Like, my soul needed this. And I tell everyone I went under anesthesia, right? My surgery team was incredible. They played the Pixies for me. I love the Pixies. Rebecca and I laugh. My favorite song is Where Is My Mind? And they played it for me. And that's how I kind of like went to sleep. And I woke up and it was gone. And I went home. And the first thing I did was I looked at my partner and I'm like, God, I want to eat something. Can we order like an entire dinner and have my parents over? I think I baked a cake for after this. Like, I'm hungry. And I ate a real meal and I felt great. And there weren't all those thoughts, right? And in those first 2 weeks when your body's not in pain, and because you're taking so many painkillers and they give you so many nerve blockers, But the first 2 weeks were great. And honestly, it was those 2 weeks after when I returned to work and the world hadn't changed with me. The world hadn't changed about me. I knew I was different. But, my first surgery wasn't a different that people could see.
Sure.
And God, my eating disorder hated that. It wanted everyone to notice, right? It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's these stupid memes that diet culture fanatics make about how, like, if your belly's only a little puffy, it's because you have a uterus. And I'm like, no, can we not say that a uterus is why someone has a big belly? This is ridiculous. Can we not do this? My eating disorder is now shaming me because my body didn't get smaller. So there's this, the kind of like the non-binary part of my brain was so happy, and the eating disorder part of my brain was so miserable. And I kind of had to go back to those original coping skills. I think Nika did such a great job of showing us, right, their breathing and their grounding stones, which I also use. I really love aromatherapy. And, the big blessing for me in the pandemic is I really love water. Standing in it, sitting in it, shower, it doesn't matter. I need it. And it's so grounding for me. And so working from home has meant more grounding and being a more grounded person through this process. And I just keep thinking, God, if I hadn't done all that therapy for recovery, this would have been really bad. And there was no information out there for me about anyone experiencing this. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, there's a lack of education, there's a lack of awareness, a lack of visibility and representation. Like this big thing that we've been touching on here, that there's no one to sort of hold your hand through that process because it's not accessible to a lot of people, or we just aren't talking about these things. I think it's also really important, and it makes complete sense to me that your eating disorder got activated in the wake of this major surgery, because it's dealing with this change. It's dealing with, I mean, surgery is intense. Surgery is on the body, and we think that it's not because we go to sleep and then we wake up and we take some pain meds, but that's not really how it goes. I had a major surgery here too, and my eating disorder was like right there at the forefront trying to like get me, and it was really, really tough to have to fight against that. And then, I mean, I also know I had to deal with like being misgendered in the hospital and things like that. What was it like working with your team? Did you feel respected?
So I had a lot of like fellowship students. So like, I guess training to be doctors. I don't know what any of these fancy titles mean. They were just fucking cool, and they were all younger than me, but they were going to be doctors. It was wild. And to be honest, they had so much education and were so excited to be there with me for this moment that I feel like I got such a unique and beautiful experience because my pronouns were used, my chosen name was used, and when it wasn't, people were correcting each other for me. And I know from other experiences at the hospital before this surgery, it is never like that. I have never had that experience in a medical setting before, except for with my primary care doctor, who is also non-binary and serves the queer community locally. So they get it. But I'm very familiar with going to the hospital and like sitting in the emergency room, waiting room, and having them call the wrong name and the wrong pronouns and your wristband not matching anything. And so I think I had geared up, like trauma brain activated itself, and then I showed up and they all just kind of calmed me down in a way that I could have never expected. And I just feel like I owe this team so much because I don't think that anyone in my life, except for maybe my partner, can realize what this has really done for me, because none of you get to see that. You're not with me every second of the day. You're welcome to be if you ever don't want to be in Chicago. There's room. But, like, you can't see what it's like for someone.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that story, that experience that you had gives me hope that maybe there is the possibility that we could go to a doctor's office and be treated with respect. Because, I mean, I was in the hospital for a week, so I was like, I live here now for this week. I have to make this my home. I have to make sure that the people are respecting me. I like wrote on the whiteboard and everything, and I was like very proactive and made signs. And it takes a lot to have this major surgery, and then all of a sudden here I am sitting here educating. So that gives me a lot of hope. And I'm so glad that you had that experience. Like, that makes me so happy to hear when people have wonderful experiences like that. We need more of that, and we need to be hearing about it too. So that's amazing.
Agreed. And it shouldn't be unique, right? This shouldn't be a unique conversation where like M got to have this great experience comparatively to other people. This great experience should be available to everybody. And, I think, there's a lot of privilege in this conversation that I'm happy to own up to. Like, obviously, I'm white and we planned for me to have surgery this year. So when, health insurance renewal came, we made financial sacrifices to buy a plan that would cover everything. We made sure my team was chosen ahead of time because my partner and I are both therapists, which means we have the ability to work from home and plan things. The pandemic put a small wrench in that in terms of a time frame, but the reality is like this is where all of my privileges really protected me and helped me in a way that other people don't necessarily have. And I think that's tragic that like you or I or anybody who identifies like us would magically not get this experience because they couldn't afford the health insurance or their plan wasn't good enough or the city that they live in didn't have what they needed, so they had to go somewhere else, which is the other privilege of my life. I live in New Haven, Connecticut. Yale is right here. They are not perfect, but Yale Hospital is a massive teaching hospital and has far more resources than other places.
Well, I think that's what's really interesting about privilege. And I want to just sort of briefly touch on this. At Project Heal, the big thing that we do is we're providing access to eating disorder treatment for people that the system is failing. And I have dealt with barriers myself in my own treatment. What's unique for me, or maybe it's not so unique for somebody with privilege, because I do also hold a lot of privilege as a person with access to resources, as a person with white skin. I was able to work with my parents. My parents were able to support me financially in going to treatment. The biggest privilege that I had, though, was that I had options.
Yep.
We had really good insurance. I could go to my parents. I wasn't alone in it. That was the biggest privilege that I had. Even, with trying to find doctors' offices that are, queer affirming and gender affirming, I have more than one option living in Chicago. And so I got to recently leave a practice that I wasn't happy at and go somewhere where I knew I would be comfortable and happy. And that's what's really interesting about, I'm sort of realizing this in this moment, that like the options, that's the
Yes.
part of my privilege that I have. And I'm wondering, what would you offer to folks who are maybe listening right now who are wanting to have surgery or who are struggling with their eating disorders and their gender identity, who don't have that kind of privilege and that kind of access?
I mean, I will say the thing that I say to everybody, and I'm not saying this because I'm on the Project Heal board or I'm here doing this talk. I believed in Project Heal for years, long before I was personally involved. And I feel like Project Heal and organizations that are kind of akin to us are a really beautiful gift because it means there's a place that you can reach out to where people can help you navigate your insurance, where there's potentially financial support, where they can hook you up with providers. I've had so many wonderful Healer Circle clients through Project Heal and have had the gift of kind of walking them through transitioning and recovery at the same time in ways that they wouldn't have been able to access. So I can't not highlight that because it's been such a big part of my life. And then I think the other piece is kind of taking inventory. And I think that's really hard for people, but really looking at, when I'm in it, in my eating disorder, with all my privilege and all my resources, I feel so alone. I can't name for you anything I have. I can't even remember that I have a grounding stone, right? So it's when you are able to breathe again, stepping back and going, what are my coping skills? What are my financial resources? What are my emotional resources? What are my people resources, right? And trying to be a little organized about it if your brain will allow, to just see what's available. There's also so many amazing nonprofits out there that help pay for transitioning, that help pay for binders and all sorts of things that can kind of, I tell everyone a binder takes the edge off for me. It's kind of like going from having a really dysphoric, depressing day to like kind of feeling bad, but like generally I can get through the day. And
Like
it's figuring out,
almost.
sorry, it's
Oh,
no, it's okay. And it's like figuring out what works for like you and your body too, because what works for my body and your body and someone else's listening is so different. You know, what we each need to do to feel comfortable in it is so unique.
I think that's very true. Um, how long had you been planning your transition?
Oh, so I came out to everybody in my life officially about 2 years ago. So right as the pandemic was starting, and we basically had been planning it the entire time.
Hmm.
And this is where, you know, being a therapist and being able to work from home for a year and a half when I couldn't engage in the world meant time became a unique privilege I never had before. So, you know, for anyone who's watching this that knows me, they will tell most people I have a working problem where I really enjoy working and helping people. And I also sublimate all of my own insecurities and fears about not being perfect and not being enough or being too much into my work. And so I will just do and do and do. And when you do that, you rob yourself of the time to plan. You rob yourself of the time to figure out what you want. And so I was forced to be at home and only do the work that was available with me through a screen. And it meant I had to have time. And when I had that forced time, it first felt like a timeout and pretty torturous. Um, but then it was almost a relief. Like I was able to figure this out. And so, you know, my partner and I sat down and we just decided, you know, there were steps that we felt comfortable with. So talking to my therapist and my med provider first, talking to my PCP and realizing I needed a new one and I needed to make a switch right away. I had a team of specialists because of all my other health stuff that I had to talk to. But I like put myself out there and I talked to every single provider and it sucked. And then I had to talk to everybody at work and that really sucked. And then I had to tell my parents, which didn't suck, but I made it suck because I worked myself up to being rejected. And my dad literally, who's like in his late 70s, who like, you know, cis hetero white guy who went to a Catholic school, like I didn't really think he would even understand, but he was like, I mean, you explained Elliot Page to me. You've explained Pose to me. Um, I don't have to understand it to know we don't throw out our children just because we don't understand them. You're not my thing to understand. I can love you even if I don't understand. And then called my brother for an explanation since he doesn't really Google, um, instead of putting that on me. And so the gift in that process of planning things, of having my dad, who is not always a supportive person in my life, become one of my most supportive people by just saying something like that to me, really proved to me that the more that I was willing to be vulnerable and be part of this journey of other people learning through me, the more happy I got, the more me I felt. And you know, now I'm always going to worry whether or not I'm too much or not enough. I just think like as an eccentric human, that's like a thing. But I mean, now there's a hope in me that, you know, if my dad and I can get to this place, and if he can like be in my home after my hysterectomy and come take care of me and is planning on driving my partner and I to the hospital for my top surgery, then there's got to be more than this.
Yeah, that's incredible, and that's such a profound story, and I'm like moved by it. And I noticed like I had the same experience when I was coming out to my. I did it over a I did it in like a family therapy session over a phone call and treatment one day because I wasn't sure how it was gonna go. I tried to
Yeah,
set myself up for success, and it went a lot better than I thought, which was really nice. And my parents have gotten a lot better, and you know they've learned and they've grown, and that's really like isn't that all we can ask of people is to just keep growing and learning.
absolutely.
Did for you, because I know it's different for everyone, and like I
Yep.
personally, others listening, I have not undergone any surgeries or any sort of gender affirming surgeries or physical transformation necessarily. Was that when you came out as non-binary, did that feel really important to you to have the physical changes?
Oh, that's so interesting. So I this is how I came out. Okay, so this is like how you can tell I'm a people pleaser. I was like, so I'm non-binary, and like you all can still call me Emily, and like she, her is fine, but like they, them's also cool, and my body's probably not going to change, so don't worry about it. Nothing much will be different.
Here we today.
Right? So this is where we got, right? 2 years later
Yeah.
is this. And the truth is for me, it happened really slowly. So first it was as people were calling me she, her in those first few weeks, something hurt, and it hurt more than when I wasn't out. So that was an answer for me. And then I noticed that what I used to think was body dysmorphia was really bad dysphoria. And I was able to finally label that and process that in therapy. And that was when I was finally like, there are things about my body that are never going to change because I wasn't born in a body congruent to my gender. What are my options? And then, part of my privilege is also I'm a therapist that works with the trans community. And so I've walked people through all kinds of different surgeries and hormones and medication. And so I get to be so well versed that it was really easy for me to make decisions for myself because I had the education. And that's where I get frustrated when I go through something and I can't find a resource for people because it was the resources I had within myself, and the people that I knew that had supported other people through this that helped me make a really solid decision that still feels good and that I'm so excited about. And, people don't have these resources. Educational resources is also like a privilege, right? Knowing even how to Google something for this is a privilege. And so I think oftentimes, making this kind of choice is so hard for people because there's no one there to hold their hand and just give them their options.
Yeah. It's a really scary and daunting thing to make a big change like that because it's something that I've thought about. I've had that question for myself of would I feel more comfortable in my body if I did something like hormone therapy
Yep.
or if I changed this about my body? And then there's always the little voice that's like, but shouldn't we be accepting our body for the way that it is, which is this body neutrality concept,
Yep.
which we thought about in eating disorder treatment. And I think this is where a differentiation between being like a cis person in eating disorder recovery and a trans person in eating disorder recovery is this idea that I relate to my body differently and that my experience of my body and my historical experience of body has been so different and so unique. And I don't think a lot of people fully realize that. I only had a couple of providers, and I've only had a couple of providers in my experience that really understood that and took that to heart.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, which was like so relieving and wonderful when I met them. And there were moments where I did at one point in treatment have a queer eating disorder therapist. I didn't think that those existed. I
That
did
makes me
not
so
think
happy.
there were queer eating disorder clinicians who knew about non-binariness and transness. I thought it was always just going to be like cis women and maybe one or two
Yep.
cis men that are in this space. So that was like eye-opening and so incredible for me. And it's that representation. And that's another big thing that we're really doing here at Project Heal is we're trying to place people with that shared layer of experience. And that's one of the things that I love about the work that you are doing is that you're working with other queer people and you're in recovery and you're working with people on eating disorders and things like that. And you can relate in a way that no one else can. How does that feel for you?
I mean, I feel like I am the luckiest human on the planet, genuinely, that I get to do this, that people trust me with something that, in my personal experience is just so deeply vulnerable and painful and difficult. And anytime I get an email from someone who wants treatment or a phone call, I feel a little bit luckier every time because not only do you want help or want to be better, but you are willing to try and trust me. And as someone who's had really terrible therapists and really good ones, I know how hard that is to trust and hope that someone is who they say they are. And I think that's a flaw that a lot of therapists have, which is we think that there's a professional self and a personal self, and we sell a professional self when our personal self isn't even aligned with what our clients are looking for. And guess what? We're human, so we pop out no matter what. So, part of my goal as my partner and I kind of do this new business venture together is what if we're just ourselves? What if you show up and I'm on the board of Project Heal. I own a business. I've had an eating disorder. I'm going through a transition. I have really bad PTSD. I'm sorry if occasionally I forget things. And also, I have the skills to support you in making the choices you need to make to live the life you want to live. Like, what if that was it? What if there was no like shtick? What if there was no selling point? What if that's just what it was?
I love that. I mean, I love how simple it is, but there's this element to it of why has nobody thought of this before?
Right?
And it's not that nobody's thought of it before, but I've personally been in that mindset of like a therapist is like an entity. It's a thing that I look to that is not human, that is beyond human, that has all the answers. And that's not the case. Like a therapist relationship is that it's a relationship and we're in something together. So I think it's amazing that you're going to walk into a space and say, this is who I am. And that's something that we do as trans people, as people who are recovering and surviving from eating disorders. It's what we do every day because I spent so much time trying to say, I don't exist. I'm not
Yep.
here. I'm going to slowly just like move to the back of the room and Irish goodbye and duck out. When now
Yes.
in recovery, it's like, no, I'm here. I'm taking up space. I may not always feel comfortable with that, and that's okay, but I'm here and I'm
Yep.
human. And that's the thing, you and I have talked about this a little bit, and we talked about it at Project Heal, this idea of the word recovery and this question of like, what are you recovering? What are you getting back? And I thought about this a lot, and I got back two very big things. I got back time. So much time was wasted on the eating disorder and thinking about food and calories and energy and exercise and
Yes.
figures. And the other thing that I got back was I got my humanness again.
Yep.
I'm a human again. I'm a real person. Well, we're looking into it. I think I'm a human, pretty sure. But
Right, so they say.
I know it depends on the day. Depends on the day. Still, I got back this ability to be a living, breathing person.
Yeah.
And that I didn't realize that I had lost that. That for so long I was this empty shell, just sort of like floating through the ether, trying to land, putting myself in places where I was like trying to fit in, but didn't quite fit in, looking for community, looking for this, looking for that. And it's like through this becoming my fuller trans self, my fuller non-binary self, that I've been able to move through recovery and also like be a human being again, which is this kind of amazing thing because I forgot what it felt like. It had been so long.
That all resonates with me so much. I feel like we could probably talk for hours, not on Instagram, just about that there.
Oh,
I always
yes.
joke with people that I'm a really good accountant for my business because calorie counting and exercise counting, it was great. And yes, now I have great math skills, and my parents are tortured by all of the math tutoring that didn't work. But you're right. So much time counting and calculators and notebooks and calorie counting apps and not enjoying meals with people and not being present when I was having that drink with a friend or when I was at someone's wedding and I couldn't let myself enjoy that. I had to like check my app first. Like, wow, that's so much time you get back, right? And then when you get time back, just like you're saying, you're a person again because I'm making art again and I'm writing poetry again and I'm raising all my little animals who have been really good during this, so I'm concerned. Um, I get to run a business and be on a board at Project Heal because I am present in my most real self.
And that's amazing because yourself is amazing and all of your beauty and your transness and everything that you do and everything that you are, I think is wonderful and magical. And I'm so glad that I get to be in conversation and share space with you tonight. I love it.
Oh, well, I think I've said this to you before. I know Rebecca is watching. You and Brittany are top two smartest things that I think Project Heal did this year. And I am so excited that we both get to do all of this cool fundraising and awareness work together because I just think we're going to get to Elton John by 2022. Watch
I
out.
think we can do it. We'll keep that goal. I'm gonna write it. I'm gonna get a whiteboard and I'm gonna write Elton John on the whiteboard. And every work towards getting to Elton John.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to ask, I mean, I think we could talk for hours. And I have one other really big question that I want to ask, and then one fun question. So as I was thinking a lot about this conversation that we were having and what I wanted to talk about, I thought about the overarching process of transitioning and how we've talked about it is a lengthy process and it takes a long time. And I know for myself, my eating disorder is all about instant gratification. So I'm really curious as to how you maintained recovery during the sort of like delayed gratification of the process of transitioning.
It was really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Um, I am an instant gratification addict. I
Mm,
cannot pretend that's not true. I think it was probably part of my personality before the eating disorder that the eating disorder latched onto and just like heightened. Um, and it's something that I still kind of struggle with. And so often, it was me using my people resources to be reminded, this journey takes time. Like I was like, I can't have all the surgeries at once. You can't just do it all while I'm there. Right. And a doctor's explaining to me how medically dangerous that is. And it really was my partner being like, okay, so like, I get it. Your eating disorder wants this to be over because you need to know what this is like. You need to know if your body will be safe. And I get it. But is your body going to be safe if you do all of this to it at once and you don't enjoy the process? And, so for me, the way I've kept my eating disorder in check is I've reminded myself I'm going to enjoy the fuck out of this process, the good, the bad, the ugly, the bandages and the medication, and all of my friends who brought me so much cake. Love you all so much, cake. And just really allow myself to kind of live in this experience, because the reality of transitioning is it's a finite time. Once I have these surgeries, I'm not going to have them again, right? My
right.
uterus isn't going to grow back. My breasts aren't going to grow back. They're going to be gone, and things about my body will change and morph as I get older, and whatever happens to me happens. But really, like, embracing, DBT, mindfulness, being in the moment is for me the only way that I have been able to get through this in a decently stable place. And I've been honest with people on my Instagram about having a relapse during this process, and my relapse being that, like, restriction works really well when you have surgery, and we are allowed to have moments, because recovery isn't this end goal. You don't get there and then you get the trophy. Recovery is more of this cyclical process that kind of ebbs and flows. And so I ebbed for a little bit, and now I'm going to flow, and then I'm going to have my other surgery, and it's going to happen. But I know what it looks like now, which also
Yeah.
means when I see clients, I know what it looks like now.
Yeah. And so it only just informs your own work, which is really
Yep.
wonderful. I think, yeah, that what you said about recovery being like a cycle. It's not an end goal. It's not getting to a place. I feel like full recovery, which I believe is possible, will
Yes.
happen without me realizing it. I'm not gonna wake up one day. No one's gonna like deliver a package to my door, like a bouquet of roses that says "Congratulations, you're done." Like that's not. It would be really nice if somebody out there wants to alert me when I'm finished or just send me roses. Please, you're more than welcome to. But it's about the process. That's where the learning is. That's where the changing and the shifting through all the discomfort and the pain is. That's where it comes from, is in that space in between the start and the finish, which I think is also akin to transitioning, is this concept
Yes.
of you start in one place and you finish in another. And it might be more of a tangible finish line with transitioning, but it's about what you can learn throughout the process, or what I can learn about myself throughout the process. And I think that's really beautiful.
I agree 1,000%. And I've never worked with or met another trans, non-binary, or gender non-conforming person that hasn't come out a better person through this process, who
Right.
hasn't become more real through this process. And I mean, I think that makes all of us, as queer people, like, so extra special in a way that the world will not let us own. So we have to take it.
We do. We do. We have to just grab it and pull it in and hold on to it.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue into my last question for you, which is, what does pride mean to you here in this Pride Month today?
Oh, so I could say really historically appropriate things about, you know, Stonewall and the importance of that. But I think for us in our household right now, um, it is we get to be married, and my partner is a cis man. But you know, as you transition, the way you look at your marriage changes. And so for us, pride is that we walk down the street holding hands, and people are a little confused when they look at us, and we kind of giggle together. We don't we don't have a like a reaction to being stigmatized at this stage in our lives. And so for me, pride is I get to be with the person I love. I get to talk with you. I get to talk with all of my clients, and our history is finally put on the forefront. Like, I don't know, for me, pride is always a reminder that I get space and I'm allowed to take space. And no one is allowed to tell me that I am too much. Because you know what? If I'm too much, I'm sorry, the light shines brightly in your face. Um, I don't know what to do about that. And I think for me this year, pride has really reminded me that, like, we are all gold stars. None of us have to earn them. We are already there. The world just keeps trying to remind us that we're not supposed to have it when we are. And I think a lot of that for me has genuinely come from the fact that, like, queer history has become such a big part of mainstream media. Um, Pose has changed so much for us in our household. I grew up with that education, and my partner didn't. My parents, you know, took us to Stonewall when we were kids. We learned about being queer at Stonewall in a queer community, whereas my partner was never exposed to any of that growing up. Being a part of his education as he takes this journey with me, um, watching Legendary and trying to learn to Vogue together, which, like, we're real white. We realized we're like real white. There's no, I just, they're so fabulous. And that's just, I can't, it's not in me. Um, but like, even watching all of that and being like, look how far we've come, right? From hidden ballrooms in the Bowery to mainstream TV. Like, fuck yeah, we did it. We did something. It's incredible.
That's magical. That all wonderful, incredible reasons to be celebrating Pride this year. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Of course.
And thank you for joining me tonight. This was wonderful and amazing, just like I expected. I'm so, again, so glad that we had the chance to share this space together. I'm so thankful to everybody who watched, who's watching still, who is commenting and engaging, to everybody who donated. Thank you so much. A special thanks to our partners at Eating Recovery Center and Undone Beauty for helping to make this happen. And with that, that ends our Healing with Pride Instagram Live week. These will be saved. They'll be available on our grid, so you can always watch them. And what a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. And I will just encourage you and everyone watching to remember that we are all fucking magical.
We are. I love that. Thank you. And have a great night.
You too.
Bye. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.